This week we are continuing our discussion on the Caucasus because our last session was on Azerbaijan. So we're staying in the neighborhood, if you like, with two presentations, one from Georgian and one from Armenia. Our first presenter is Yulia Antonyan, an associate professor for the Department of Cultural Studies, Faculty of History at Yerevan State University. She's doing extensive ethnography on issues of religion and anthropology of social structure, focusing both on the Soviet and the post-Soviet periods. She has written extensively in various international journals. She has studied through fieldwork Armenian communities in Georgia, Syria, and Lebanon. Our second presenter is Weronika Zmiejewski. I hope I pronounced the surname correctly. She's a social anthropologist, specializes again in the Caucasus and Central Asia. She has a PhD from the University of Vienna, and her dissertation is on Georgian migrant women in Greece, and especially in Thessaloniki and in Georgia. She's, as she told us, currently based in, or rather, she's doing her new project in Vienna, in a very interesting topic on the World War II recordings from Central Asia and the phonogram archive in Vienna. So we'll start with the presentation, and in the end, when the presentations are completed, we'll take questions and we'll have the discussion. So Yulia, we are starting with you.
Thank you very much, Eleni, and I have to thank you for inviting me and letting me be part of your series. Unfortunately, I wasn't present at the previous ones just because I was really very busy during the first semester, but this semester is relatively free, so I hope that I will be a frequent participant of all your online seminars. And today, I would like to present some preliminary findings on my another project. And previously, I've been focused mostly on religious issues. And this one partly stemmed from my previous experience, because in this or that way, exploring religion, I had to deal with the remnants of the Soviet past, of people who still were living with their memories about the Soviet past, very different memories. And I decided to shift a bit to try to go into a different topic. And now I'm actually implementing a project which is called the Soviet Legacy, and this is about actually what remained of the Soviet, about people's memories, about people's practices, people's feelings, especially those of nostalgia, which is sometimes feels and sounds strange for some our generations, but it still exists. And this presentation, this is one of the first attempts to bring together some research, some theoretical approaches, some concepts that I tried to use, and I thought they were most appropriate and most usable ones in the context of this research. And I would like also to share some field work with you, which is very demonstrating all those concepts in action. And of course, I wait for questions and for your comments, which would help me in continuation of that project. In fact, when I don't work alone, I have some counterparts, I have some colleagues, especially my PhD students working on this project. And when we were thinking how to conceptualize the topic and especially the field, first, we of course had to explore what are the main approaches to the Soviet past and what are the main conceptual premises that are usually being used to approach to this topic. I have to say that Armenian Soviet past has not been researched enough, and in a way we are one of the pioneers, but at the same time the Soviets, there is a huge research and literature on the Soviet times regarding Russia and other Soviet republics. So first of all, of course, we had to look through all this rather rich literature, like scientific and conceptual basis, and that was also a very good ground for comparison, which is for us very important. And I tried to identify several main aspects of approaches to the Soviet past, and mostly to the legacy of the Soviet past, because of course exploring, studying the Soviet past per se is one thing, and trying to understand what kind of legacy does it have and does it leave. This is completely different topic, and what we are now doing, we're trying to focus on the legacy, and I would address this concept a little bit later. And right now, in fact, and we have kind of we have identified a lot of course approaches and concepts, but I want to emphasize four of them. First is seeing Soviet experience as a traumatic experience and kind of intergenerational trauma that is passing from one generation to another, and usually this traumatic experience is related to kind of structured violence and everyday fear that people describe they were living through, they were passing through in the Soviet times. And also the second field is everyday hardships and needs for adaptation to, for example, the deficit, to different kinds of corruption, ideological pressures, and so on. So these two kind of spheres, they created, first of all, the fragmented memory on the Soviet past, and we can see how memories are different. And even in one interview, we can see different layers. One layer which is kind of nostalgic about the Soviet past, and why I will also address to it later. And the other layer is kind of traumatic one, and those layers sometimes are intermingling, interweaving, and they're discerning and or drawing boundary between them sometimes is hardly possible. The first concept is kind of transitional concept, the theory that was very popular at the end of 90s because it was thought in those times that the socialist regime is now being abolished, and all post-Soviet and post-socialist country, they are in a state of passing or transitioning toward the capitalist regime, capitalist way of life. And of course, several years, at least like maybe decades, they should be conceptual, they should be transitional, they should have some maybe ways and pathways of gradual gradual denying the Soviet values, behavior practices, and so institutions and so on, and kind of in how to say this, I forgot the word, accepting the new ones, which are innovatory and which proved to be much more progressive ones. But starting from 2000s, this concept of transition, it becomes weaker and weaker, because there is a main question from where and to where countries are transitioning. And in fact, the concept of overall transition has developed into multiple transitions, but still, even in this form, it remains too weak. But I don't think that maybe we have to fully abandon those concepts, because in fact, all processes that were now surviving and that were now, and right now we can understand it even better, they are in some way, they are transitional. Why? Because there are two ends at least visible. There is one end which is kind of the Soviet past, and which is different, and this is kind of the democratic and European and maybe this market future, which is also very vague, which is not maybe well defined, but still people somewhere realize that they're going from somewhere to somewhere, and this feeling of being in the middle of their way, it is rather visible, and it is audible in people's interviews and people's speeches. So I think that we have to accept this concept, but not like a political concept, but rather than anthropological one. So we can bound it to people's feelings, to people's maybe identities, people's sensations, which are also important in these terms. For a third approach, this is of course post-colonial and post-imperial aspects of the Soviet experience, and there is a big, huge literature on post-coloniality. And I give several names here, which are mostly focusing on the Soviet type of post-colonial processes, because, post-coloniality can be very different, and it can address different time periods and different cultural, political, and economic aspects, and so on. But those particular authors, they are trying to understand how much this post-Soviet space keeps being post-colonial, keeps how to say this, surviving, or this post-colonial realities, this post-colonial tale, which can still be very long and last for decades and even more. And the fourth approach is kind of mixed one, which first of all admits that the Soviet experience is a very complex one. And assessing it and evaluating it only as a traumatic one or post-colonial experience or I don't know, transitional ones and so on. This is very narrow approach, and maybe we can try to embrace much more realities, not only one, but a lot of different realities and different experiences. And also we can try to see a lot of different configurations, because even in Armenia, and Armenia is very, very small country, as you may know, even in Armenia, if you move from region to region, you can see very different configurations of how the Soviet past and what the Soviet past is converted to or is being converted to. We can see very different memories. We can see very different approaches. We can see even very different feelings about the Soviet past. And of course, the legacies are also very different. So that speaks on rather complex way of exploring the Soviet legacy. And now I'm trying to go to the, sorry, to the next slide. Here, just because of this complexity and because of reluctance of using some of only one or even two of those approaches, we've been in search of different theories that would help us to have a very specific approach to different phenomena. And here I would like to present several approaches that seemed very valuable for our research. And first of those approaches is the so-called anthropology of the absent. And three others, Bille, Hastrup, and Sorensen, in 2007 or 2008. Now I cannot remember. I should have put the date, but I didn't, in fact. They published a volume of collection of articles about the anthropology of the absent, and that contained a very interesting conceptual approach to people's relationships with their past, or not necessarily their personal past, but their collective social past. And in the case when this past is already over, and in the cases when the past is not articulated or visualized or materialized or embodied in very how to say this, in very particular materialities. And this approach is has to deal mostly with emotional and sensual, ideational interrelations, interaction with people past. And I would like also to cite a phrase from the introduction to this volume, kind of interacting with the absent. In fact, it is being in touch with the past, and this feeling in touch in the past, with the past. And we thought that this kind of approach is very applicable in the cases of the Soviet legacy study, because sometimes people's attitudes, people's memorization of their past, people's even their imagination about their past and therefore the future They sometimes they are not trying to ground all this in very particular material proofs. Sometimes they are dealing only with their feelings. They are dealing with their imagination. They are dealing with their feelings, their grievances, their regrets, even their memories. They cannot be visualized in kind of material way. It is enough to express some nostalgic feelings and nostalgic approaches, and we can see how people are trying to interact with their past, and how this past is still influencing them, which is also the most important thing. The next theoretical concept, which seems to be very interesting in these terms, is Weronika Chaturyan's approach to the Soviet ruins, and as she calls it, life extempore. She's an archaeologist, and she's working mostly on the archaeology of Soviet ruins, in fact, but trying to study the ruinated plants, buildings, I don't know, institutions, some material remnants of the Soviet past. She had discovered that she has to deal not only with materialities, this ruinated materialities, but also with people that are living with those remnants, and they are living on the remnants, they are living on and with these ruins. And those lives, they in fact are why extempore, because they are spontaneously adapting to this constantly changing situation, constantly changing reality. And in fact they do not feel any ruptures with their Soviet past, because the life with among these landscapes and interacting with these ruins and landscapes, it kind of is unfolding very smoothly for them. Sometimes and you will see some photos when people are still working among those ruins. So for them, nothing has changed, because they still have their work. They are doing something on these machines in the very shabby and ruinated plants, and everything around them is changing, but their life is still going as it was. And for them, not nothing, of course, but little things have changed. The next concept is recycling, of course, recycling concept. And I think that Sonia Luermann's research on religious situation in post-Soviet Russia is very valuable in these terms, because she has discovered how the same forms, methods, language, materiality that was supporting Soviet ideological processes and influences, they are now being recycled and reused by the religious organizations, and they kind of emulate the Soviet party life, party organization, Soviet communist language, communist practices, education practices, in just changing, of course, the names, and they are still using and reusing all of this in their religious everyday. And this concept, of course, can be extended, and we can see how those forms, methods, language, and materiality are now reused in a lot of institutions. And sometimes we can see how the Soviet legacy is becoming a institutional legacy. We can see people that are applying the same methods, same approaches, same relationships and networks as it was during the Soviet times. But all this is now adapting to completely new realities, completely new ideological frameworks and political frameworks. But still, when you talk to these people, sometimes you think that those are relics of the Soviet past. And this is not only a feeling of an anthropologist, but that happens because they are using the same language. They are trying to transmit the same values, the same agencies they had in those times. And of course, when we talk about post-coloniality in general, here we have to understand that there is a bunch of inherited political and economic dependencies, cultural dominance, and even superiority in different types in knowledge, in language, for example. They are still there. They exist in post-Soviet and even post-socialist countries. But I have to say that we can see how those dependencies and dominances, they're not the same anymore. Sometimes they are fading away. Sometimes they are transforming into more active political interference and influence. Sometimes they are existing as kind of some transient models and languages which do not have this strict relations with the Soviet past, but rather they are represented and understood as kind of cultural values, cultural practices, and so on. So now I'm trying, before going to some case studies, now I try to go to some questions which are emerging in the course of this kind of research. The general question, of course, is still what remains of the Soviet Union. But here we can, of course, discern between the concepts of legacy and heritage, because sometimes those concepts are mixed and sometimes they are confused. They are taken each for another. And but I think that it's very, very important to draw, if it's possible, or when and where it's possible, draw some boundaries between these two concepts. Soviet heritage is still very rich and abundant because of Soviet materiality, Soviet practices, cultural heritage. First, you can see in all post-Soviet republics is like fairs, book fairs, for example, and you can see that the majority of books sold there, they are in Russian, and people still have this model of reading patterns, those reading patterns that had been born and had been developed in the Soviet times, and they are still going on. We can see cities, this previously industrial cities that were mostly constructed, mostly built during the Soviet times, and their landscapes, their urban space their organization also belongs to the Soviet patterns and urban strategies. And sometimes this heritage is being reconceptualized, is being reused, it can be also eliminated if it's considered not to be very much fit into new frameworks and realities. So in this or that way, people are interacting with the Soviet material. Sometimes it is awarded with how to say this, with a value of architectural monuments or something like this. And in fact, in sometimes we can see continuity of this heritage, continuity of planning and organizing of urban space, continuity of some social practices which are still being alive, very much alive in the post-Soviet space. But when we are talking about the Soviet legacy, here maybe the best word we can use is the aftermath. So what makes us feel that the Soviet Union is still present in a way, and we still are using the products and Soviet Union's how to say this, in this case we can even use this word heritage, feeling and realizing its Soviet belonging. And to alleviate, to make for myself and for us to make easier the approach to the concept of legacy, I suggest two different kind of dimensions of this legacy: the present Soviet and the absent Soviet. So the present Soviet, it means variety of material and non-material forms of agencies that are still visualized, that can be seen, that can be felt, that can be heard. Those are some political and economic realities that create this continuity of political alliances, preferences, reference points. For example, I can see, of course, this point can be differently measured and visualized in different countries. And for example, some of post-Soviet countries, the cultural reference point is shifting to the West, or has already shifted to the West. Then in some other countries, like countries of Central Asia and partly Armenia and Georgia, this reference point is still kind of pointing to Russia. And there are a lot of interactions, interrelations between this Armenian, Central Asian, and Russian, for example, academic communities, political communities, some cultural communities, I mean art communities, which supporting the old Soviet hierarchies and sometimes reproducing them. Then, as I already said, we can talk about the vast presence of the Soviet materiality and assemblages in urban and rural landscapes. And they can be renated, they can be disintegrated, they can be reused, recycled, reintegrated into the landscapes, sometimes reframed, sometimes not, sometimes their reconceptualization, reframing may have different stages, and they can, for example, very good example is renaming the streets. In early 90s and 2000s, a lot of streets were renamed, but later in 2010s, when this neo-Soviet and neo-imperial aspirations got stronger, we could see how this renaming was abolished, and they came back to their old names. Recently, we have streets that were renamed in the third time. So, and interestingly, those names, they were completely different, and they reflected different stages and dimensions of interaction with people's past, with people's present, and with the current political conjunctures. Of course, this about Soviet identities and institutional continuities. For example, when we talk about social identities, still a lot of people when they are trying to define and to what social group they belong, they are defining themselves in terms that were suggested by the Soviet political and social ideological elites. For example, still a lot of people, they are characterizing themselves as working class, as intelligentsia. Very few people that are thinking about themselves in completely new categories, or who are trying to get rid of those old categories. So that is, of course, very much noticeable, and this is not something which is not seen and cannot be heard. Of course, we can talk about local hierarchies of power, and this is especially visible in different types of state institutions, when people still address to each other with this Soviet form "товарищ", "engage". Yeah, and they do not feel any inconsistency in these terms. And although in some official level, they are not new, of course, they are kind of traditional Armenian address, like calling forms like Baron and Tikin, that means Mr. and Mrs. or Madam, maybe. Yeah, they are accepted and they're widely used, but still in state, in public institutions, this form is just an alternative one, and the old forms of calling each other and addressing each other remain these Soviet patterns of politeness and hierarchies, of course, because they're kind of pointing to some hierarchical relationships between the employees of those institutions. So far, we can see also some behavioral patterns
Julia, your microphone has been interrupted. Open your microphone. By mistake, you switched it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's okay now.
But your presentation is not there anymore.
Yeah, I can see, and now I will go to the presentation once more.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see? And can you remember when the microphone stopped working from? So I have to. I want to know. Did you miss something?
Only the last paragraph.
The last paragraph.
Yeah.
About identities or what?
No. The last three lines, let's say.
Okay. No, I even did not tell about them. I still was at this identity and patterns things. Yeah. Actually, one more Soviet legacy thing, which can be very visible and materialized in Armenia right now, is of course this I would call this neo-imperial recycling and instrumentalization of imperial Soviet concepts, and we will see a couple of case studies that articulate this particular point very clearly. And why neo-imperial? Because this of course is connected to some Russian political strategies, especially at the beginning of 2000s and 2010, when Armenia, not only Armenia, but also a number of post-Soviet or previous Soviet republics, they kind of were taken into can you hear me? Because yeah, they were taken into the patronage of Russian political kind of aspirations and strategies, and sometimes that was presented as going back to some old Soviet friendships and Soviet dependencies, but most actively some neo-imperial topic and neo-imperial idea has been developed in this regard. Why? Because Russia did not identify itself in those times, or I would rather say identified itself not only with the Soviet Union, but also it went back to imperial times. It wanted to prove that this Russian legacy towards the previous Soviet republics. It is not something purely Soviet. It came from the most ancient era, from the Russian imperial times. So this kind of connections and this kind of boundaries, they were tried to introduce by Russian or Russian supported institutions, organizations, and of course authorities in those times in Armenia. But of course, this neo-imperial instrumentalization was related not only the history of 19th century, but also the Soviet history taken large. And we have also very direct, in this case, I would say, neo-Soviet restorations and reappearances, reemergences of some movements and political restoration, and there are also several cases very much articulating this particular point. And there is also a very interesting visual and material reiteration of the Soviet past. This is marketing of the Soviet materiality, but not only materiality, in fact, and here we have this intermingling of the Soviet present and the Soviet, present Soviet and the absent Soviet, because trying to marketize Soviet materiality or remnants of Soviet materiality through different kinds of private and public initiatives. They are, first of all, they are trying to affect people's feelings. They are trying to influence their imagination through this feeling of nostalgia, through their very dear memories on their childhood, on their parents, on some positive, as they think, sides of the Soviet past, non-traumatic one. And this is also very much materializing this Soviet legacy. And going to the absent Soviet, another dimension, which we can see. Of course, first of all, we can talk about memorial narratives and commemoration of different kinds of the Soviet past. Sometimes they are not only memorials of the built still in Soviet times, but new ones, which are trying to bring people back to their youth time, to their for example, it is very much applicable for the industrial cities, because the origins, the foundations of a lot of such cities occurred in the Soviet times, and now trying to construct local identities and local histories. They, first of all, they are trying to instrumentalize and revitalize those sentiments which take them back to the years when the first plans were constructed, the first buildings were constructed in this particular city. Of course, this is about a very large spectrum of feelings of different kind. They can be very positive feelings, like nostalgia about their childhood, about their youth years. This can be very traumatic feelings about some losses, some pains, some regrets. This can be feelings that in the origin of those feelings and sentiments we can find deep in the Soviet past, but they still exist today, and they are in fact applicable and instrumentalized in the current realities, not necessarily in relation to the past. For example, political distrust and this existential fear, especially it is very, very strong in Armenia, because Armenia has been in a state of war for the last decades, and this distrust to like toward authorities, toward public institutions, toward neighbors, toward big countries and big powers, and this existential fear of losing lives, of losing their more or less stable present. They are always there. And of course, sometimes this distrust and fear, they may support and encourage and trigger again, this neo-imperial and neo-Soviet political sentiments and aspirations. People think that, okay, we were living very happily in those times, and now we're unhappy. We're in a constant position of fear and threat to everything. So maybe we go back to the past situation, past positions when we were happy and when we were secure. And that also brings to a very interesting paradox that engenders completely very interesting and very how to say this, very well articulated social and cultural imagination. For example, when if you ask people what kind of future, what kind of society do you want to have, and they do not try to find these new patterns among the existing models of societies, of cultural, educational, healthcare models, but they go back to the Soviet past. So the Soviet past is the main source of their social and cultural imagination. For example, when they ask anything or demand anything from authorities, from the government, usually they demand that they believe they already had in the past. For example, like free housing, or like free education, free, I mean, free of charge, or for example, they construct their ideas and concepts of being educated, of knowledge, of education, of morality, of different other values, social and personal. They try to construct all those patterns, referring the Soviet past. Of course, the Soviet past, in this case, it is represented as kind of ideal past, as a golden era, this kind of mythological time, mythological era, but still people refer it as part of their own past. So this is interesting. And now I'm trying to go to some case studies. One of we worked much in this new the Soviet small industrial cities, because in fact they are a very good field for studying this kind of questions. They are compact, they have a population which is very different, in fact, because there are industrial cities that maintained their industrial profile, and there are cities which have lost this, completely switching to like agriculture, for example, or tourism mostly, of course. But still, people remember very well their industrial past, and every one of them could talk for hours about their plants and factories where they were working in the Soviet times. And also because those plants and factories either in ruinated condition or in still working or maybe half working positions, they are part of their landscape. They're visible. They are not big cities where ruins of the past can be hidden or lost among these newly built, constructed skyscrapers or completely new landscapes. In those small cities, these industrial zones, they are very, very visible, and people are interacting with them both visually and emotionally almost every day, and that make them think of those ruins of this materiality of the past as a part of their present. That, of course, is very interesting aspect of the field in those cities. Here you can see, for example, Soviet relic of in one on the territory of one of the plants, which is still working, and I will show another pictures. This is like steel plant. Which is, of course, it doesn't work for 100%, only for maybe 20 or 25%, but still. And the other not working capacities of this plant, of course, they are not used, and they are ruinated. They are slowly destroyed. And people are still living their working lives. They're making some of their careers among ruins, among this material, how to say, memories and material recallings of the past. And you can, I don't know why it doesn't show. It should be a lot of much more photos in this, but I don't understand why it doesn't show them. Okay, something is wrong with my computer probably, but that's okay. This is the picture of one of the workshops of these plants, and it looks like completely ruinated thing, that something which has been lost and which has been forgotten. But at the same time, this in this same like workshop, there are people who are still working on those machines, and there are even these big machines that are transferring this steel spare parts from one place to another, and you can see how the working economic present is coexisting, co-living with this ruinated past. And this is like life that those people are still living. Next. Here also very interesting material witnesses of the past. The first one is the bust of Marshal Bagramian, who was Armenian hero for the World War II, was one of the most important persons of the Soviet war commandment. Usually he was worshipped in Armenia, and usually his busts, his photographs, paintings of him, portraits of him, in the Soviet past, they were put in the center of public rooms, institutions. And now we can see it kind of shifted to a periphery of this institution. They do not want to get rid of it. They still remember him as one of the most important personalities of the Soviet past. And he has some very real value for them, because he was Armenian, he was a commander, he was a hero, he was marshal, and so on. But still, they do not want to keep them in ideological centers of their institutions. That one is located in the local House of Culture. That is interesting, this ideological and semiotic shift and partial disintegration of this ideological unity of those institutions. And in the next photos, you can see the part of Soviet posters with a photo of Lenin, as you can see. And that was made part of fence. So people who were trying to make fence, just trying to border their private space, they used it. And it is very visible from the street. It's some of kinds of touristic attractions of this city. But they, again, they didn't want to fully get rid of it because they must have had some respect, maybe some maybe positive sentiments toward the figure of Lenin, but they decided to reuse it as something very interesting visual that would make their landscape more attractive for tourists, but they still have kind of respect to this issue. They do not try to break it or to throw it away in the trash bins or something like this. And another very interesting case of marketing the Soviet. This is a private collection of Garigin Grigoryan, who lives in Kapan. And he was a previous public functionary, public employee. And he is collecting everything which is related to Lenin. First, because of deep respect and worship of the personality of Lenin, this collection is in no way sarcastic or like humorous or something like this. It's not critical. It's not. It's really contains a lot of respect towards the personality of Lenin, and even one of his motivations was to save everything which is related to Lenin from vandals, from annihilation, from destruction, from loss. But at the same time, that also becomes her business, his business, because this museum is one of the most frequently attended. If in the previous case that was a person who belonged to the generation of people that has made careers during the Soviet times. That one belonged to this transitional generation who were still born under the Soviet Union, but they learned, studied, developed their career already in post-Soviet time. But this person, Beghahn, who started collecting Soviet artifacts from 2003, and now this is one of the most I even think that this is one of the richest collections on the all previous Soviet space, and he's using it. He's marketing it very actively. For example, he's establishing a small restaurant. People are invited to celebrate their holidays, their birthdays in this environment of Soviet things. And he's offering only Soviet food, this Soviet holidays, specific, very specific holidays food. So he's playing with curiosity and nostalgia, in fact, and sometimes you cannot even understand what is more in his particular motivations. Is it a deep sympathies toward the Soviet past and Soviet ideology, or just attempt to instrumentalize and use it in his own nostalgia? And now I will be trying to be very quick. This neo-imperial recycling of all concepts, they are best articulated in the concept of Armenian-Russian friendship. And there are several museums in Armenia. This one is the oldest in Abovan, which was founded in 1982, so during the Soviet times, but it's the most of its exhibition was created already after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and now it is one of the ideological, I would say, hubs of the Soviet, neo-Soviet and neo-imperial aspirations. And the next one is in the village Malishka. It was, again, I don't know why, but some photos are missing. It was constructed by Russian oligarch of Armenian origin, Ara Abrahamyan. And this museum is fully reminiscent of the Armenian imperial past. But interestingly, this museum doesn't work because it had no visitors. Because village of Malishka, this is a province, this is rather far from Yerevan, and which is also interesting, there is a church nearby, and mostly the believers come to this church, and they do not kind of notice this kind of museum. And this is the last slide, in fact, about this neo-Soviet movements and political restoration experience, which by the way, been activated recently in connection with some shifts, very clear and well-articulated shifts, political shifts of Armenia towards the West. And there are a lot of local organizations which are working under the patronage of Russia, and they are trying to regenerate, reinstall, and in some terms even restore the Soviet values and Soviet sentiments. In the first photo, you can see this Besmertny Polk on eternal regiment, something like this, yeah, which is, and in fact, people are participating in a rally with the photos of their relatives who had been killed during the World War II. So this is kind of rehabilitation of the Soviet memories and Soviet ideological how to say this, framing of the so-called Отечественная война. How to translate it, the war for the
fatherland.
Yeah, fatherland, something like their motherland, yeah. And in the second photo, this celebrating May 1st, like Labor Day, and also you can see these connotations and implications of the Soviet communist past. And here you can see the face of one of the leaders of local government in Gyumri, who, by the way, won elections on 2025, and he was a candidate of a communist party. Interestingly, he did not instrumentalize any of Soviet and socialist ideas. On the contrary, he was much on some religious sentiments or something like this. But he really thought that the Communist Party itself enough to revitalize some sentiments about the Soviet parts in people. And in fact, maybe his prognosis was right, and he won the elections. Actually, not won. He got rather a big number of votes, but he was also elected as a mayor of an alliance of rather different opposition parties. So that was the last slide of my presentation. And to summarize a bit, I like to say that we can see very different and very diverse articulations and appearances of this Soviet legacy. But still, we should discern between very different phenomena. So not all of them, even being very similar in forms, sometimes articulating very similar ideas and patterns, reproducing very similar patterns. Sometimes there were different, they all have very different messages, in fact. And that was one of the difficulties of studying the Soviet past. This variety and diversity of messages, attitudes, and feelings that people experience and have right now. So here maybe I stop, and I'm waiting for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yulia. And we'll pass directly to Weronika and her presentation on Georgian women on the move, migration to Greece in times of crisis. Her new book by Beghahn.
Thank you very much. So I tried to open my my slides. Okay. Right. And oh, I'm sorry, just a moment. I just have to start. So, okay. Hello, thank you again for having me here. And I'm very happy to present my book today. Thank you, Julia, for this wonderful talk that I could listen. I hope I can also connect sometimes maybe to Soviet nostalgia and Soviet perceptions. So I'm Weronika Zmiejewski. I work at the Academy of Science in Vienna. Right now I do something completely different. I look at recordings that were made during World War II with Nazi collaborators from the Caucasus and Central Asia. It is an unreappraised collection of recordings, and I tried to open it, to work on it, and in the end also to share it with the world. But this is a process. Before I did this, I wrote my PhD on Georgian migrant women in Greece, particularly in Thessaloniki. So it is already, so this is the outcome of my dissertation. And my book is based on fieldwork that I conducted in Thessaloniki in 2015. It's already some time ago. So the book took me some time to be finished. So there were other projects, children, and so on. But still, so I did 1 year, almost 1 year, 8 months in Thessaloniki. Fieldwork I did, I was focusing on mostly middle and higher aged women of those women who they had kind of a Soviet background in the way that they had studied during Soviet times, and also they were working during Soviet, or like in Soviet Georgia. So in 2015, there were around 30 to 40,000 Georgian migrant women living in Thessaloniki. So these are numbers from different statistics. Half of this number approximately worked undocumented. And most of the migrant women I talked with, or the focus group of my focus group was, these women worked either in elderly care or housekeeping or cleaning flats, and also childcare. But this was less because in 2015, most of cleaning jobs for Georgian women were not available anymore. Also childcare because of the Greek financial and economic crisis. So all these kind of jobs were less accessible during the time of my field research. Also, very importantly, also in 2015, the incomes, the earnings of those women were much less than before. So in 2008, women remembered they had salaries up to 1,000 and even more euros. And then in 2015, it was a harsh reduction up to like between 400 and 900 euros per month. So I did my field research in Thessaloniki together with my little born baby. So this was also important for me also to mention, because my baby also was a gate opener, not only for the Greek families to let me in, but also for Georgian women. Yeah, because a lot of these women I was talking with. So I also met some Armenian women, and I also had interviews with Armenian women. For them, for many of those women, it was they didn't see or they didn't touch their own children and grandchildren for many years. I met a woman who did not go to Georgia for the last 15 years. So she knew all her grandchildren through Skype and so on, but had never touched. So being also accompanied by my baby was sometimes challenging, but also really bringing me into connection with people. During my stay, my field research in Thessaloniki, also the women I interviewed convinced me that you cannot look only at our lives here in Thessaloniki. You have to go also to Georgia to understand our full migration project. And here you see on the other slide an embroidery. It was made by one of Georgian women, showing her village life back in Georgia. And she said, this is somehow like you have to know all the time we are working, doing, struggling. We all, in our heads, we live every day with the imaginary of returning back to Georgia and having there our village life back and so on. And this convinced me then to also conduct kind of a multi-sided ethnography. So I also went to Georgia a year later for 3 months. I went to Tbilisi and other places in Georgia where migrant women's families lived, or some women also returned in 2016 because of unemployment or difficult conditions. So I went to their houses, I visited them in their villages, and I also went to houses where the women had not been for almost decades, like 2 decades, for 20 years. And I talked with the husbands, the sons of the migrant women, and I got to know what information actually they have about the migrant women in Greece. What do they actually know about their daily lives in Greece? So on the right slide, you see also an advertisement of a bus station in Tbilisi, the main Ortajala, the main bus station where all the buses from Thessaloniki arrive. And I also spent time on this bus station and like doing ethnographic observation, looking how these migrant women were met and how big their packages and things, gifts had been when they came back from Greece. So my book, as I told you, is like based on anthropological field work. And while observing, talking with these women, I look at socially and politically constructed categories and practices in my book. So I look at categories like motherhood, womanhood, migranthood, migrant care work, and remittances and care. And then I was looking at analytical dimensions, how to understand those categories and practices. And I took an analytic lens through uncertainty, recognition, and mistrust and agency. These are kind of the major concepts in my work that I applied to understand these categories and practices of migrant women. So what is really imminent? What is the migration experience about? And how can I understand the dynamics taking place in the whole migration process? So to show some parts of my book, I will start to read a poem that was written by a migrant woman. So many migrant women had always a paper and a pen, like really a paper pen, although it was already time of mobile phones, they always liked to write down poems. It is also kind of a tradition of Soviet legacy. So they have often a way how to frame poems. I took the pen and a letter to write down the lines in a way that it was widespread during Soviet times. So, poor mother shuts the door. She said farewell to her little children and to the loved ones. Started an infinitely long trip abroad. The tears of separation wouldn't stop. Their heart is dying. She cries silently, heartbroken. She cried almost all the way to the border. She's leaving, but her soul and her heart remain with her children. She has not lived without her children until now. Then somehow she overcame herself. It is enough to cry, don't let your heart smash on the stony road. Who then will take care? Who will support your children? It is better to dry tears on your eyes. She left like this, lost for years, no longer noticeable, turned into other people's slave and dirt cleaner. Her proud Georgian heart was completely crushed. No trace of it. Her pride turned into a shadow. This part of the poem reflects upon hidden hardship inherent in the migration experiences of Georgians in Thessaloniki in particular and in Greece in general. In the shadow of the Greek economy and society, these migrants struggle to sustain their families back in Georgia. From the very beginning of my field research on Georgian migrant women in Thessaloniki, I was made aware that no one comes to Greece for pleasure. Siamovneva in Georgian. This statement made by Marina, whom I interviewed in Thessaloniki in September 2015, was made on behalf of tens of thousands of Georgian migrant women who had arrived in Greece since the beginning of the mid-90s. Just like other migrant groups, Georgians come to Greece in order to work hard and earn money. This should not exclude activities involving pleasure per se, but the life circumstances of migrant women make pleasure a very scarce but valuable commodity. While looking for job opportunities in Greece, women from Georgia accept the dire conditions of domestic work that puts them in a vulnerable position. A crucial aspect of this vulnerability is the informality of their labor and their uncertain political status. So most of the migrant women working in a domestic domain in Greece experienced an undocumented status during the initial years of their stay. So when I did my research, it was in 2015, it was before the visa-free travel to European Union was announced. So from 2017, Georgians as Armenians also could travel to Europe without visa anymore. But before this, most, like all of the migrant women I met, experienced times with an undocumented or illegal status. It also changed time by time. During these sharp years of 2014 and 15 and the decrease in salaries, they often did not invest in prolonging their status anymore because they didn't know what will happen the next. So they would lose their jobs, the salaries were shrinking, and they tried to look for other opportunities. Also, some of my informants left to America, to the US, others went again to Turkey where they had been previously. So all those things also, like these the really hard working conditions during the years of the financial and economic crisis also very much impacted their regulated status. Although migration policies in Greece have been reformed several times since the 90s, immigration law have still lagged far behind the reality, failing to acknowledge the presence of thousands of undocumented care migrants. Domestic work takes place in the realm of the employer's household, where migrant women endure the deprivation of basic labor rights. They are subjected to the regulation and control of their employer, which often leads to exploitation. These structural constraints are not confined to Greece. Migrant domestic workers face similar challenges in other parts of Europe and around the globe. Despite their essential contributions, remittances, thousands, millions that women had sent in the last years. So despite these essential contributions, but the contributions, the help in sometimes very hard living conditions in Greek families, where those women, these Georgian migrant women, have to care for people who have psychological disease, also Alzheimer, and where they have to stay for many years. So this is an essential contribution. But these women remain invisible or hidden in household, with their labor lacking both social and political recognition. Having left their own family for somebody else's, women have to come to terms with the vacuum of care that they have left at home, and the fact that live-in care employment deprives them of the right to start or maintain their family life. So most of the migrant women arrive in Greece without their husbands, family members. Sometimes they have a sister or a cousin, but generally their husbands, maybe like when they migrated by the end of the 90s, the husbands had joined them after 2 or 3 years, but after, like when the Greek economic and financial crisis started, most of these men left Greece. So migrant women were mostly staying alone. Migrant women enable wealthier countries' family to sustain a traditional family model, allowing their women to participate in their labor force. The demand in the global north creates a care drain from peripheral economies such as Georgia. As Arli Hochschild puts it, love and care became the new gold. The care deficit in migrant women's home countries is the other side of the same coin. So migrant women, although maybe many of them have already grown, like children who are in the age of 16, 17, but also the women, they leave behind their grandmothers, other people or mothers who are also in need of care. The following question occurred to me again and again while reading the literature on domestic work and exploring the life of Georgian migrant women in Greece. Why are women willing to enter into a relation of palpable structural imbalance that demands more than one can give and offers so little in return? So this was the main question to me when I met Georgian women in Greece for the first time. When I arrived in 2014, I went to Thessaloniki for the first time, and I remember me thinking all the time, so women are leaving their families behind. They have no documents, no insurance. They are struggling very much with their kind of Soviet biographies, that they actually, like this devaluated status, they had actually studied, they had a profession, and now they work in the care sector. It is such an hardship for these women, and they can't just go back to Georgia to visit their families as they are unregulated. And so once they would go back to Georgia, they would not have the finances to again cross the border illegally next time. So thinking about all this hardship, I think, why do these women take all this burden on their shoulders and still are migrating and continue to migrate? So this was the main question. that I wanted to respond to it in my book. So within these global dynamics, Georgian women have established a migration chain. This is a historical novelty for the country of Georgia, where women had not previously been the primary movers. The process of how they have established a migration channel gives a much wider insight into changes in Georgia's social and economic organization, and hence to the post-Soviet transformation process itself. Poverty and the harsh economic circumstances legitimated women's search for a livelihood and occupation beyond their national borders. Although the church became a very powerful institution during the 90s, which restricted actually women's labor abroad, and it was very hard for women to negotiate with their families, their husbands, if they were still alive, that they would get the permission to leave the family. Consequently, in the early 90s, Georgian women became almost as active in migration as men. By the mid-2000s, thousands of Georgian women had moved abroad, primarily to Greece. Why? Apart from the high demand for caregivers, Greece appeared culturally familiar due to the shared adherence to the Orthodox Church and deep historical ties reaching back to ancient times. However, most importantly, from the 80s onward, the Greek government offered ethnic Greeks, Pontians, living in Georgia and other states of the former Soviet Union prospects of access to Greek citizenship. This resulted in new unforeseen linkages between the two countries, Georgia and Greece. Women always told me that without these networks that came from friendship, social ties with those Pontic Greek ethnics from Georgia, they would have never come to Greece. So classmates, they had Pontic classmates or family members somewhere in the whole family. They were kind of the brokers for them because they had access to, they knew where to find a work. They had already some Greek knowledge, so they helped them very much to get into the migration chain. Following ethnic Greeks from Georgia who arrived en masse from the early 90s, Georgian women started to arrive in the mid and late 90s, all with a bag full of problems, as Marina, whom I cited at the beginning in this presentation, remembered. So when I wanted to unpack these problems are sometimes not visible, and these problems didn't come out in the first talk with the migrant women. It was often something that I only discovered while interviewing these women for the third, for the fourth, or the fifth times. So it was not only the 90s or the aftermath of the 90s. Like when we think about post-socialist transition, I think it is very important to look at different phases, like times, periods within this post-socialist transformation time. And especially the 90s had been a very, very different, like the most difficult part, of course, for all the countries, post-socialist countries, but for these women who migrated to Greece, they had often either lost their whole property as their sons or husbands started gambling. They gambled with cards or other, they gambled their houses away. Or they had sons who got imprisoned or in crime, in drug crime. So they had to sell their houses to get the sons out of prison. Or they had already grown daughters who divorced, and they had to support daughters, granddaughters, and all the others. Or they had a sick husband at home, or they were widowed or divorced. So they had to support or to feed their children and grandchildren alone. So for women this time, the 90s, even if they went later in the beginning of the 2000s or in the middle or even 2010, this time the 90s had mostly crashed or had left really big marks in their biographies. It is the big crisis for them. And in my informant narratives, this big crisis, in Georgian they say didi krizisi, is connected with painful memories of times when food was lacking, electricity was only intermediately available, and husbands were paralyzed by circumstances of sickness and struggling to earn money wherever they could. All the women I interviewed were actually employed before they came to Greece. So they were not unemployed. It was their husbands often unemployed. They employed in a sense. They were either selling their cheese on markets or but they were all already kind of, how can I say, they were still connected. I want to connect to you, Julia's talk all the time. They were all the time connecting also to their Soviet idea of labor, shroma. In Georgian, you say shroma to this word of labor. So they felt like we learned to labor. We know what is labor. So they labored everywhere, on markets, selling, or in kindergartens, everywhere. They knew how to labor. And this labor behavior and knowing, they also felt, and that's why we knew how to care and how to survive in Greece, because we knew, our generation, we still knew how to labor. But still, although they knew how to labor, what applied to all of my informants was a lost sense of stability and predictability that had previously allowed them to plan their future. What had come along with this deep loss of the 90s, what I say, was an uncertainty that was engraved in women's stories, and therefore always present while they were building their livelihoods in Greece. But how did women's migration develop and change when the post-socialist transition, the time of uncertainty, was ostensibly over? After the Rose Revolution of 2003 and the subsequent era under the presidency of Mikhail Saakashvili, the new neoliberal path and extensive reforms slowly enhanced living conditions in Georgia. Saakashvili even announced the end of transition and invested strongly in the modernization of the urban centers of Tbilisi and Batumi. Nevertheless, Georgian women increasingly migrated to Greece until 2009, when the Greek economic and financial crisis began. One explanation for this sustained increase in migration is that Georgian women who considered migrating during Saakashvili period faced fewer social barriers. So it was already an established migration chain, and women had already convinced the society and showed that they are able to earn money and they are able to send remittances. So migration of Georgian, the lifestyle, kind of it became a lifestyle for middle and older aged women and kind of a socially accepted lifestyle. So therefore migrant women, even in the 2000s, where the times of uncertainty were actually over, they could get much faster and easier into the migration chain. But the explanation of Georgian women was that according to them, the uncertainty persisted among, although they were in Greece for many, many years. In the social science, it is widely understood that insecurity gives rise to uncertainty. Although that understanding is very true and important for I would say the results of my book, this perspective is only one layer of uncertainty. While unraveling the motives of women's decisions and investments between the two livelihoods, Greece and Georgia, the uncertainties that transpire are also situated between order and chaos, between continuity and change. So thus the concept of uncertainty describes the moment of being in between that can relate to the outside condition and an inner state of mind. This means that women, in a way, for many years are trapped into this feeling of being physically in Greece, earning money, and also with their minds, with their heart and soul. But on the other side, they are trapped in this in-betweenness that all the investments, everything is kind of directed into a future, of a potential future in Georgia. So this is the layer of uncertainness of being in between. Just a moment. I will follow. So what is important also in my book, that I do look also at the livelihood in Georgia. I look where did women, in what did women invest, and how do the remittances also change the perception of middle class rituals, and like all, because the women also are really directing money and also becoming the breadwinners, and they also decide about what is going to happen with the decision. So they are kind of the patron, or the heads of the family in certain way. But I, like the most part of my research, I spent in Greece, looking at the at their migration experiences in Thessaloniki and in the livelihood in Thessaloniki, because this was something that often in Georgia I realized people do not know what is really the life. How does the life of these mothers, grandmothers really look like? They have no idea. So the livelihood in Thessaloniki had become a women's realm, as almost all Georgian women arrived in Greece alone and engaged in a female-dominated migrant community. As most of the men and husbands left the country, women remained alone, and they are negotiating the norms, the values within the migrant community, which is sustained by almost only women. As a result, women played a dominant role in shaping the values, moral norms, and economic systems in migration. This livelihood in migration proved to be capital-driven. The pioneers of the migration stream and those following, like the women I met, commodified formerly socially embedded services and established a different economic and social order. In this I mean, for example, the recommendation system of women, where women recommend work to another migrant women. They usually take half of the first salary for the recommendation of the job. And women told me all the time, these kind of things we also do in Georgia. We also recommend job places to our friends, neighbors, acquaintances. But in Georgia, we would never charge money out of it. But in Greece, this is an existential mode. Here we are about to earn money as fast as possible. So here we sell our working places, or we take money for the recommendation. And then one of my informants also mentioned, in Georgia, we would never take money out of it, but we would organize a big supra, a big table with a lot of food and stuff, a big ritual. So of course we would maybe even spend more money for the recommendation, but in the end it is a ritual, and also other family members would gain something out of it. So this was a point which women very often deplored, and which made their livelihood in Greece very hurting to them, because they felt that although we are Georgians, we have our norms and values, and we have a way how we deal with friendship, with acquaintances. And in Greece, suddenly, when you enter into this new migrant communities, you see that these values do not apply anymore. I'm sorry, how much time do we have? Should I continue, or how? I do not want to take.
You can continue for 5 minutes more.
Okay, so okay. So as I said, arriving in Thessaloniki means entering into and contributing to a new social and economic frame. On the one hand, this frame is driven by the idea of profit, as I said, to earn money as fast and as possible. And on the other hand, it is shaped by the hardship and vulnerability of being a migrant, like this undocumented situation, having only oral contracts that you never know when it will end. Yeah, so it is, everything is can be like the whole relationship can end the next day. This circumstances sets in motion new relations of trust and intimacy and spurs modes of mistrust. In my book, a major focus lay on cultural and social expressions of migrant women's mistrust. So, of course, trust is as important as present as mistrust, because most of the migrant women I interviewed have never been in any other country before, like only in Georgia for the whole time. And of course, without trust, they would have never dared the migration process. So and they have no tacit, they have no clear knowledge about what will be the situation then. So of course, trust and engaging in new trust relation is very important. But what I found out within this new social frame in migration, that mistrust is also very important. While interacting within a migrant community, many migrant women avoided the onset of intimacy. Due to the mistrust, they carefully selected the information they would provide about employment, legalization, and so on, and tried to directly reciprocate any gift of help, assistance, or material means to compatriots in migration. Complaining about the mistrustful attitude among migrants, they attributed it to the uglier side of migration, the vulnerability, tension, the greed for fast capital and competition. While women wished mistrust to remain within the confines of their migration, over time it could seep into the most intimate sphere of lives. It shaped their relationship with relatives, husbands, and children back in Georgia. So as for many years in the beginning, migrant women want to show at home that they totally entrust all the investments the children, husbands are planning to do, and they just send the biggest amount of their salaries just directly to their relatives in Georgia with questioning, but with this kind of unconditional trust, I would say. And over time, women dare also to mistrust their relatives. Oh, what is my son actually? Is he really providing me the care he always talks about? Once I will be back in Georgia, so maybe it's even better that I will also invest into a flat for myself when I'm back in Georgia, because maybe they will not reciprocate the gift of the financial care that I provide. So over years, they often start to mistrust their family members. And this is a very painful moment. And though it is an unspoken consequence of mistrust, several migrant women admitted the liberating impact it had on them. It created distance, opened space for detachment from obligations and norms of solidarity, and emerged as a shield against exploitation. In migration studies more broadly, mistrust is mostly problematized as hindering migrants' ability to integrate into the community and to build deeper social relations within the host societies. My research challenges this dominant view by highlighting the other less explored modes of mistrust that concerns its above-mentioned liberating effects of migrants. In this sense, mistrust also serves as a catalyst in the struggle for independence and self-determinancy. There is, however, a crucial point that allows mistrust to take effect in this direction. Migrant women unlock mistrust emancipatory potential when they dare to mistrust. Once you have to dare first to mistrust, because it is actually an obligation, a norm, a social norm in Georgia to trust. Migrant women unlock this emancipatory potential when they dare to mistrust, by having alternative sources of trust. So it is very important for them that they have either friendship ties developed within the migration communities, a stable employment, connection with the Greek network, so even Greek friends or people they knew they would help them in any case, and most importantly, confidence, imedi. So this what I also said in one point, that they know how to work, they know how it is possible to survive. And once they have their trust into their own abilities, they dare to mistrust. So I will stop here. I have so much more to say and some more slides about remittances and investments, but the time is over, I guess, and I don't want to bother you.
And leave something for those who are going to buy your book.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both of you. And I will open the floor for some questions if there are any. I have a couple. I will start with Yulia. Thank you very much for this very rich account of Soviet and Soviet legacies. I was wondering, with the new wave of immigration from Russia to Armenia due to the war in Ukraine, how did the whole situation change, especially for the everyday memories of the Soviet, not so much the institutional and then institutional discourses regarding Russia? And also, how much Armenian diaspora, especially Armenian diaspora in Russia, play a role or any role in this kind of memories? And I have a question for Weronika as well regarding two things. One is about the relation of these women with, especially daughters of what we call migration studies of the first and the half generation. So daughters that they grew up between Greece and Georgia, coming and going. If the daughters continue the work of their mothers in the same families, or even because I see some kind of, not tendency, but some examples lately in Greece of daughters that they started working with their mothers in family, in domestic services, and then they went into becoming entrepreneurs. For example, they opened a pastry shop or a restaurant, something like that. And the other thing, a tricky thing, is the question of sexuality of these women. So relationships, sexual relations with other men, apart from their husband, or the relationship of their husband with other women. Because this was also a tragic history in this migration.
Maybe I start first. Thank you very much. First, Weronika, thank you very much. It was really very, very interesting. And I even think to get your book and start to read, although I've never done any research regarding migration, but it's really caught my attention. And thank you, Eleni, for your very interesting questions. Actually, they are really very relevant ones. First one about these Russian migrants to Armenia. In fact, there are a couple of very, I would say, superficial studies so far about the Russian migrants in Armenia. No better research is being done, just because the process is not stabilized. It's still going on, and the number of Russian immigrants is very changing one because there were up to 80,000 according to very approximate estimations in 2022. But right now, the most part of them left Armenia for Europe or sometimes also for Russia. Because people did not find actually ways to earn their life in Armenia. And this community, Russians community, of course, they are influencing some way to the Armenian cultural and social landscape. And a lot of different types of cafes and cultural centers have been opened in Yerevan. And in some of them, I wouldn't say that they influence or support much this Soviet memories or Soviet sentiments or nostalgia, etc. But their cultural centers usually sometimes instrumentalized some of Soviet legacies, for example, linguistic one. They are usually Russian language entities, and they're of course attracting some Armenian intellectuals. And I know a couple of the most popular cultural centers where they are run by both Armenians and Russian, and they organize a lot of different types of events, which are mostly very liberal, bear very liberal nature. They are not supportive to Putin, to Russia, but still they're being organized in Russian. And if specialists like me usually assist at those events, and sometimes I go from time to time just to see what's going on there, I can notice some this kind of superiority of Russians over their Armenian counterparts. Sometimes this superiority was articulated not only by Russian themselves, but Armenian themselves. So in a kind of, they admit that these Russian intellectuals, they're smarter, they're maybe more educated, they're more knowledgeable than themselves. So one can notice this kind of inequalities. Maybe they are not very clearly articulated, and only a specialist might remember, might notice some of those things. Or not only specialists, I would say even people who are rather very sensible toward any articulation, any manifestation of this colonial or imperial things. And in fact, not all of Armenian intellectuals demonstrate that kind of sensibility toward these things. So because speaking Russian, it's normal for them. Most of them have graduated from Russian-speaking schools, and they perceive these situations rather normally, rather very organically. But to me, there is some inequality which maybe which is not noticed or felt by all the participants. I must say that also this reluctance to learn Armenian, which is also one of the most noticeable, neo-colonial maybe or imperial things in Armenia, just because Russians say that why should we learn Russian if all Armenians speak Russian? And this is in fact a very widespread stereotype, but this is a stereotype because not every Armenian speak Russian. Russian, and less Armenians, in fact, especially among the new generation, they speak Russian and prioritize speaking Russian in their lives. But still, this attitude, and usually sometimes I look through the migrants' chats and social networks, and all of them say that they feel rather comfortable in Armenia. And this comfortability, sometimes you can never understand. This is ranging from these imperial stances toward this rather very human, very personal relationships to the country that gives them shelter and possibilities to avoid at least this Putin violences and pressures. So I think that everything I've just said, this is just preliminary observations, and I think that, of course, we need deeper research on that. Sometimes, in my own research, members of our team, sometimes we understand that this is very, very difficult to make differences between several categories of manifestations of the same phenomena. Are they imperial? Are they Soviet? Are they Russian? Are they Putinists? Because there can be subtleties between them, but only studying deeper and making more profound analysis of all these things, we can make any special conclusions on that. So I wouldn't like to say anything very, very special right now. And about this second question, which is also very relevant, because in fact the Armenian diaspora is now actively instrumentalized by Russian authorities, because here we're surviving pre-election period, and there is only 3 months to the next elections, and Russia right now kind of is trying to bring into a lot of representatives of Russian diaspora in Armenian diaspora in Russia, which have money, which have influence, which have still a lot of connections, networks in Armenia, to change kind of political or reshuffle maybe this political situation in Armenia, maybe in hidden hope to really influence the outcome of the elections. So, and Russian Armenians, they are playing a crucial role, so know that. So they are not only supporting those actions and agencies financially, psychologically, in social networks. A lot of them just come to Armenia and participate in different rallies and different events. And sometimes you cannot even understand that they are not Armenian citizens. They came from Russia. So yeah, Armenian diaspora here playing not very, I would say, rather shameful part in all those developments. And this is being analyzed by different political and public analysts, and this topic is already actively sounded at the public level. So yeah, but I don't know personally if there is ongoing research of all that, sociological or anthropological. I hope that there is. I haven't heard about this, but it's definitely it is worth to be researched. I don't know whether I answered your question or not. Thanks.
Thank you. Weronika?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I will start. I will start maybe with the second question, sexuality. It is, of course, an issue, like an issue. It is a topic. It is a topic, I would say, for women, because once they are not in Georgia anymore. And of course, they meet men. Also, they have had possibilities to chat or through Skype and other platforms to get to know some other men. It is often a thing that they are very much afraid of, especially those of older age. I mean, older age. I mean, in the age of 50 plus. They are very afraid to start a relationship, first because they are afraid that in the migrant communities they will be that their reputation is going to be spoiled, that everyone will say that she's a bossy, she's a bitch, yeah, and this is going then back to Georgia. And then maybe, like, it is not only the reputation is very important, because it is not only about about a social standing. It is also about your houses, because often the houses in Georgia back, they are in the hands of their husbands, or even if they do not live with them officially anymore, they are kind of divorced. But they pretend having still a relationship just because they are afraid they will have no house and no flat or something to return to. And also the children. Often the children say, hey, I don't want my mother, although my mother is divorced, I don't want my mother to have a relationship with any man. And the worst thing would be a Georgian man in migration, yeah, or a Pontian, a Greek, because then my reputation is spoiled, and I am trying to make the best life I can. I'm the best student in my university and so on. And then my mother will spoil our name in the society. And they are also, so there's a big pressure from their relatives, children back in Georgia, who do not allow their mothers to have a relationship. So this is one side. But of course, they have relationships after many years. Often the women, they married in very young age, and they said, I'm like a child. I don't know even what sexuality actually is. I even don't know how I became pregnant in the end, because they have never experienced sexuality. And some met Greek men, and they had like the first kind of real, and I mean, I'm over-examinating, but I'm saying that they experienced something they'd never experienced before, because in Georgia, only like mostly like in relationship in relationship of marriage and so on. So it is not that, so they had never explored kind of sexuality really. So it is something many of them learned in Greece. And I mean, most of the women still, like my informants, were still very, very careful with these things. So they were very afraid. But those women who engaged in relationships, some of them also married to a Greek man, and they were very happy out of this decision, although they were afraid that the family would quit the relationship. In the end, it didn't happen. All this, what they were actually afraid of. They had all of the women that I interviewed, when they started a relationship, they felt really like betraying their kin and their nation. Like it was so strong. But they overcame also, many of them overcame also these initial feelings. So I hope I answered a bit this question. And the other thing concerning the daughters, so actually until 2017, when I conducted my field research, women were not that often visited by their grown daughters, like from my group. It happened, but rarely, because it was all they had to organize a tourist visa for them, so it was an additional cost, additional expenses. And also many of them had not a place for them where they could stay. They could stay maybe at an acquaintance place, but if they worked 24 hours in one household, they could not take the children to this house, or even didn't want. So I would say in my case, this didn't happen so often, but it happened only later. I realized that, for example, here there is a slide of a Georgian bank, and I remember that one daughter came to her mother and stayed for a longer time, started to work then in this Georgian remittances bank. So what you said is particularly like is maybe something I did not investigate so much because it did not happen so often. I think it is something maybe that is right now eminent. I can imagine, because now with the visa liberalization, one can travel there and back. But what happened often to the daughter, like the mothers didn't want their children to become care workers as they were. They could be cleaners. This is somehow okay, but not care workers. So from like my group, the women I met, they tried everything to invest into something that their daughters could either go to Germany to study or do anything else, or even to marry in Georgia and just to live out of the remittances, but not to engage in the same care work. But some of the daughters, I just remember right now, who were already grown and who visited their mothers, they, for example, they established, I just want to show one slide. They met, for example, a Pontian, an ethnic Greek from Georgia in Thessaloniki. And with the help of the partner, they could, for example, establish a business like a bakery or something, because these ethnic, like they got citizenship, these Pontic Georgians, and then they could build a business. So there is a relation, but I would not say that they did, like in my times, they didn't do it by themselves. It was always in the help with these ethnic Greeks, like the Greeks from Georgia.
Thank you very much. And Katerina is a colleague from Pandora University.
Thanks to both of you for your great talks. They were fascinating and very rich and interesting. I have a question for Weronika. So Weronika, I think I really enjoyed the whole discussion and your whole paper and the book. I'm looking forward to reading the book, especially the points on reciprocity, gendered sociality, trust, mistrust. I found them fascinating. I only have one question. We often see migration or migrants as a unified category. And sometimes if we don't do that, we do see, some national categories of migrants as a unified category. Whereas I have the impression that there is an element of age that is central to most of the people you talked with, and the way they relate and how their Soviet past informs the present experience also related to that. And so I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that, because I'm also thinking of, let's say, Georgian migrants in Greece who have a refugee background who would not relate to the Soviet past. That would be for sure. And the final question would be regarding the language you conducted your research in. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your questions. Also, Eleni, thank you. I didn't mention it. What I wanted to say, yes, you're totally true. There is an age category of these Soviet educated women, as I also met women from Armenia, and I would say certainly narratives would fit to each other. There would very much similarities with this regard on labor, shroma. I don't know, there's, I guess, an Armenian word for this labor attitude, womanhood. Also, I think the Orthodox Church, religiosity, this kind of neo-patriarchal movements that occurred in Armenia, also in Georgia. There are similarities, I would say, but Georgian women would always say, still, we are not, for example, as those women from Ukraine. Yeah, so we can't just draw one. And so also in the same age, for example, this is what Eleni raised, the question of sexuality. Georgian women would always say, no, Ukraine women, they have a different attitude to sexuality than we have. Yeah, this is something complete. It is also a stereotype, I would say, but still within their migrant, community, there are still nuances that would fit, where we can also apply to certain extent a national category, but also not, as I would also say this, the ethnic Greeks coming from Georgia, although they mostly gain already citizenship and so on, many of them are, what they told me or what I know, they are socialized completely in a Georgian way. They only got documents because they somehow could afford and to present or to kind of organized documents that disclosed their somehow Greek origin, but they would have never have any real affiliation with this Greek origin. But they completely identified with the kind of Georgian, with the Georgian ethnicity, and also with all the norms, all the things that applied actually the group of Georgian migrant women. So I think there is, as you said, there is a very important layer of age and a Soviet background and Soviet, like I would also say, not only the Soviet like educational background, but also the post-Soviet period, especially this hard period of the 90s, which applied to almost all these countries. And here I would also see a difference, for example, post-socialist country in Poland. I'm originally from Poland, and I would say the 90s have been hard, but of course people could move to Germany and to other countries. So the 90s are not that harsh as the 90s had been for many migrant women, particularly in Georgia. So I see there are some slight differences, but I agree with you. Yeah. And also you had another question concerning the language. Yeah. So I studied Russian years ago, and I studied Georgian language. So I talked in Georgian language. So I also tried to learn some Greek, but it was with a baby, and I just could have, like, I had small talks in Greek. So, but generally most of my interviews were in Georgian language. And some women were socialized, also loved also to speak Russian, because they wanted to show how eloquent they are. And then we had also talks in Russian.
I think this is crucial. Sorry, I think this is very crucial, like using Russian as their language of talking with you or among each other, or Georgian. I think this is a crucial part.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Very crucial. Yeah.
Do you have any other question? No. So I would like to thank you both very much. It was very important for me and very rich presentation for depicting the current state of affairs in the Caucasus and beyond. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you both in Thessaloniki, or Yulia in Armenia, or wherever you are, Weronika.
You're welcome.
And I would also like to thank our lab coordinator, Ms. Georgian, for the patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. And I would like also to say that next year in 2027, we're going to organize a conference on the Soviet. And this is still, actually, we are still working on the concept. And as soon as it is ready, I will maybe try to, share it through your network, and I invite every one of you to apply for this conference. I think that it would be rather interesting, and it would be fun, of course, in Armenia.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ.
Bye.
Bye.